So anyone that has a little bit of noise in the background, I would recommend just mute yourself just in case. If not, I can do it for you. Let's see here. Try something here. Yeah, there we go. All right, cool. All right, so shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug, as always, with the Awakened by Yahuwah Fellowship. I got my mom with me tonight, as always. We got Sister Shoshana join us as a guest. We got another guest here with us. So I believe that would either be Sister Milka or one of Sadia's sisters she's brought on. And then we also got Brother Dennis there over there in Georgia with Sister Shoshana. So tonight we're going to be dealing with a study, kind of like you could say most people would call this conspiracy theory, what we're about to be talking about. But believe it or not, the Old Testament that's in your Bibles today were written by men that have conspirized to remove the true Messiah, Yahusha HaMashiach, Yahusha the Messiah, from the messianic prophecies so that no one would believe in him. And this is an intentional scheme that they had. And I'll show you guys how I have proof. I have proof by itself of their own text. So we're going to go tonight and we're going to deal with what's the difference between the Masoretic text and Fusion manuscript when you talk about the messianic prophecies. So we're going to be dealing with strictly with the messianic prophecies and other prophecies that Yahusha pertains to. So just bear with me. I'm getting this study on the screen here. So here we go. All right. Conspiracy to remove Yahusha from messianic prophecy. So here we go. I think first we should go to Genesis 49, chapter 49, verses 10 to 11. That's going to be the first major difference, as you can see here. So all right. As you can see here, there's a difference right here. So I'm just going to read the header real quick before we go into the scriptures. The header of this study, it says, have you ever wondered why it's somewhat difficult to find Yahusha in the Tanakh or the Old Testament? And this question, by the way, could be posed to Jewish people out there that are listening or hearing. If you ever thought why have you ever rejected Yahusha because you couldn't find him in your Old Testament? So this could be posed to even Jewish people out there. One of the main reasons is the Masoretes, who are rabbinical scribes of the 10th century AD, by the way, 7th to 10th century AD, adding vowel points that change certain verses to make them vague. What is the them I'm talking about? The messianic prophecies. Okay, so we're going to go to the first one that's probably the most obvious of a difference when we're talking about the messianic prophecies here. So let me go to my sword here. All right, so I'm going to show you guys what the Masoretic says. By the way, because I know a lot of our brothers and sisters use this translation, I'll just use the ISR for the Masoretic here, because I know this is a very popular translation many use. Okay, so we're going to go to Genesis 49:10. All right. Okay, so it says, the scepter shall not turn aside from Yehuda, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him is the obedience of the peoples. Now, what's interesting here is the Septuagint's more specific in that verse. It says, a ruler shall not fail from Yehuda, nor a prince from his loins, until there come the things stored up for him. And he is the expectation of nations. So instead of Shiloh, it's expectation of nations. By the way, Shiloh just means peace, by the way. So again, that could be more or less the rabbinical idea that the Messiah was just supposed to be a man of peace. So that could be why they changed that verse. So, okay. The next one we're going to go to That might not necessarily be a manuscript problem, but might be a translator bias. But if you look at most Masoretic text swayed translators, Isaiah 7:14 will be translated as young woman or maiden, usually if they are pro-Judaism, if the translator is pro-Judaism. The Septuagint clearly says virgin. So we're going to look at that real quick. And like I said, it might not be a manuscript issue. It might be a translator issue. But many of these pro-State of Israel, pro-Jewish translators like the ISR and the Holy Scriptures translated that way. So we're going to look at Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14 here. It would be nice if my phone could, cooperate. That'd be great. That'd be great here. So Isaiah 7, verse 14. Okay, so the ISR says, therefore Yahuwah himself will give you a sign. Look, the maiden conceives and gives birth to a son, shall call his name Emmanuel. Now, if you look at the Septuagint in that same verse, it says, therefore Yahuwah himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive in the womb, shall bring forth a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. The reason we know for a fact it should be virgin in the Septuagint is, if you look into the Greek, the word there is parthenos. Parthenos literally means virgin. It's the same word that's used for virgin in the New Testament, by the way. Same Greek word. So, depending on your translator of the Masoretic text, they would translate that Hebrew equivalent, Alma, as young woman sometimes. So, and even with the Jewish Publican Society Old Testament, which is an English translation of their Tanakh, they translate as young woman as well. So Judaism today would argue that Alma means young woman. So, and there's historical, you can research this for yourselves, but many of the Catholic Church fathers talked about this around the 3rd century AD, how rabbis were trying to change that verse, the understanding of that verse, maybe not literally with a pen, but they were trying to eisegetically change that verse to mean young woman. They were trying to teach people that it doesn't mean virgin, that it means young woman. So anyway, so that debate has been around for centuries, FYI. So anyway, but yeah, guys like Augustine talked about it. I think Tertullian was another Roman Catholic Church father that talked about it, how these anti-Yahusha rabbis wanted to change it from virgin to young woman, yada, yada, yada. So let's see here. So Isaiah chapter, the next one we got here is Isaiah chapter 8, verse 14. The Masoretic text leaves out, if you shall trust in him. So again, this is a pretty key phrase here, especially since it's talking about the Messiah in this context. It's talking about the coming Messiah here. So it says, and if you shall trust in him, the Septuagint says, he shall be to you for a set apart place. You shall not come against him as against a stumbling stone, neither as against the falling of a rock. But the houses of Jacob are in a snare, the dwellers in Jerusalem in a pit. So allegorically, it's talking about if you trust in him, there's no stumbling block. Again, that goes back to the cornerstone and all that. But see here in the Masoretic version, as you can see, there's no mention of trusting in him. It just says he shall be a set apart place. But for a stone, he shall be for a set apart place, but for a stone of stumbling and for a rock of offense to both the house of Israel and for a gin and for a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So it doesn't make any sense. So it's including that he would be a set apart place and a stumbling block at the same time. So again, that even the way it's worded in the Masoretic doesn't make any sense. So that's why I say, people always say to me, oh, what's the big deal about the vowel points, Doug? That's the big deal. Changes the whole verse. Okay. Jeremiah 11:19 is the next one we have, and this is a big one too, in my opinion. This is where you're going to start seeing how they were intentionally trying to hide Yahusha here. Jeremiah 11:19, a little vowel point there changes a phrase, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. So Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 19, for those following along. So let's get to here, and let's go to the Masoretic first. So it says here from the Masoretic first, but I was like a lamb or an ox that is brought to the slaughter. I find it interesting that they put the word ox in there with lamb, so it doesn't even make it specific, like pointing to the Lamb of Yahuwah and all that. So I was like a lamb or an ox that was brought to the slaughter. I knew not that they had devised devices against me, saying, let us destroy the tree with the fruit thereof. Let us cut him off from the land of the living, let that his name may be remembered no more. So those that don't know about Yahusha, don't know about the New Testament, they're not really going to get that's talking about Yahusha there. Mm-hmm. People that don't know the Brit Hadashah that well. Now, if you go to the Septuagint, though, it's a little clearer. A little clearer. But I, as an innocent lamb, notice no talking about an or an ox, okay? I believe the Masoretes added that in there to throw us off and not pay attention to the lamb, okay? But I, as an innocent lamb, led to the slaughter, knew not against me. They devised an evil device, saying, come and let us put wood into his bread. Let us utterly destroy him off from the land of living. Let his name not be remembered anymore. Now, as far as I know, to fit that prophecy, there's only been one person in human history that would fit that context. He's called the Lamb of Yahuwah. He walks like an innocent lamb led to the slaughter. He has wood put into his bread figuratively his body. Okay, there's only one person in human history that fits that. So I could see why the Masoretes would want to change that and change it to cut the tree with its fruit or whatever. That makes it completely generalized. It makes it a lot harder to figure out who it's talking about there. Okay, so we just did Jeremiah 11:19. Okay, Amos chapter 4, verse 13. This one is not even there in the Masoretic, this phrase. It's completely omitted. So now we're getting to actual omissions here. So book of Amos chapter 4, verse 13 here. Okay, so for those that are following along. All right, so Amos 4:13. I'll first read from the Scriptures translation here that uses the Masoretic. Okay. Actually, specifically the 1998 version, just to let you guys know. All right. For look, he who forms mountains and creates the wind and who declares to man what his thought is and makes the morning darkness, who treads the high places on the earth. Yahuwah of armies is his name. Declares to man what his thoughts are. It's weird phrasing there. Now, if you look at the Septuagint here, it says here, for behold, I am he that strengthens the thunder, creates the wind, and proclaims to men his Messiah. Or in the Greek, it actually says Christos, okay? Forming the morning and the darkness, mounting on the high places of the earth. Yahuwah Elohim Almighty is his name. Major difference between proclaiming to men his thoughts versus proclaiming to men his Messiah. So by putting a little vowel point on that word, it changes the word of Mashiach to thoughts. That's all they would have had to done. They put a little vowel point there. Oh, whoops. So that's why I'm against these what they call in biblical Hebrew today the nikud little tittles and whatever you want to call them, little dots that they want to add to the text, because that completely changes the verse there. Okay. Psalms chapter 40 verses 6-8. This phrase here is completely different and actually shows where the apostle Paul was quoting from. So first going to go to the Masoretic. So the Masoretic would say here, slaughtering a meal offering you did not desire. Okay. You have opened my ears. What? Burnt offering, sin offering you did not ask for. So when Paul quoted from this, does Paul say you opened my ears? No. Let's go to the Septuagint version here. Sacrifice and offering you would not desire, but a body you have prepared for me. Oh, whoops. Whole burnt offering and for sin you did not require. So again, when someone says to me, oh, the vow points don't change much, really? Because it just changed that whole messianic prophecy. And I could see why. If you understand who the Masoretes were and what they believed, they did not believe in Yahusha as the Messiah. So obviously they're not going to believe in a pre-existing Messiah that would take on a human body. So obviously they would want to change that. So anyway, Isaiah 61 verse 1, the Masoretic leaves out in this verse recovery of sight to the blind. Oh, I wonder why. So Isaiah 61 verse 1. The Spirit of Yahuwah is upon me because he has anointed me. So let's actually go with the Masoretic first to show the difference here. So we got the TS 1998 again. The Spirit of Yahuwah is upon me because Yahuwah has anointed me to bring good news to the meek. He has sent me to bind up brokenhearted, to proclaim release to the captives and opening of prison to those who are bound. I noticed something missing there.
At least even the Catholics got it right. Remember in the movie?
Yeah.
He clearly says, and to give sight to the blind.
Yeah. So the Brenton's English translation of the Septuagint reads as follows. It says, the Spirit of Yahuwah is upon me because he has anointed me. He has sent me to preach glad tidings to the poor, to heal the broken heart, to proclaim freedom to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind. Mm-hmm. So the Masoretic again leaves that out. Probably because they knew that he was giving sight to the blind.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so they realized he did that. They couldn't deny that he did that. So they omitted that from a messianic prophecy because if they keep it in there, they're going to look stupid. They're going to look like, oh, well, we rejected a guy that actually fulfilled this. So anyway, Isaiah 49 verse 7, LXX says, worship him. Masoretic text omits the word him. So this would be showing that the Messiah is worthy of worship. Again, this is another thing that the Masoretes would not want to leave in there. Because then it would show that the Messiah, the coming Messiah, has to be the creator himself. And that's something they would not like. So Isaiah 49:7 from the Masoretic. I'll read first from the Masoretic here. So it says, thus says Yahuwah, Isaiah chapter 49, verse 7. Thus says Yahuwah, the Redeemer of Yasharel, and his set apart one, to him whom man despises, to him whom the nation abhors, to a servant of rulers, kings shall rise and see and arise, and princes also shall worship. Because of Yahuwah that is trustworthy and the set apart one of Yasharel, he shall choose you. So we'll see how it's different with the word him now in there. Okay. Thus says Yahuwah that delivers you, the Elohim of Yasharel, set him apart that despises his life, him that is abhorred by the nations, that are the servants of princes. Kings shall behold him, princes shall rise and shall worship him for Yahuwah's sake. For the set apart one of Yasharel is trustworthy, and I have chosen you. So it's actually saying, he's prophesying, saying kings and princes shall worship the Messiah. That's what it's actually saying. So, yeah. The old saying is one word, you change one word in a verse, it changes the whole entire meaning. So let's see here. We talked about blind, Mizrahi text omitted. Okay. All right, so let's see here. We also have Isaiah 11, verse 10. But actually, let's go to Isaiah 11, chapter 11, verse 4 first. So this is the actual prophecy about Yahusha destroying the anti-Messiah here. So Isaiah chapter 11, verse 4 says, but he shall, so let's go to Masoretic first here. But with righteousness he shall rightly rule the poor, and shall decide the straightness for meek ones of the earth, and shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and slay the wicked with the breath of his lips. So this, again, allows us to see, okay, so the Messiah would destroy the wicked, right, in general, okay? But what if it's supposed to be more specific? The Septuagint says, but he shall rightly rule the cause of the lowly, he shall reprove the lowly of the earth, and he shall strike the earth with the word of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he destroy the wicked one. Mm-hmm. Now, why is that such a big deal? Well, if we go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse, I think 8 it is, if I'm not mistaken. Does Paul say the wicked in general, or does he say the anti-Messiah? Okay. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom Yahusha shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. It should say wicked one, which the Aramaic actually says. It says, then that evil one will be revealed, whom the master Yahusha will consume with the breath of his mouth. So by the Masoretes taking out the word one in Isaiah 11:4, it completely disqualifies Paul's prophecy that he's quoting from. It makes Paul look like a crazy person, because Paul is pulling from that verse saying that this is how we know that Yahusha was predestined to destroy the wicked one. He was the one to destroy the beast. But if you take out the word one there, you're just thinking about the day of Yahuwah. You're not, you see what I'm saying? You're just thinking about the wicked in general, the non-believers in general. You're not thinking about the beast. Okay, so that's the difference. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 5, Masoretic text lacks see the salvation of Elohim, which is a big deal, because that guy that's about to die when Yahusha's born, I believe he even quotes from here. He says, I have seen the salvation of Yahuwah. So it's a big deal that this is in this prophecy here. Okay. So Isaiah 40, verse 5, we're first going to look at the Masoretic here. It says, and the esteem of Yahuwah shall be revealed, and all flesh together shall see it, for the mouth of Yahuwah has spoken. So the esteem of Yahuwah shall be revealed. Versus, if you look at the Septuagint, it says, and the esteem of Yahuwah shall appear, and all flesh shall see the salvation of Elohim, for Yahuwah has spoken. So they completely take out the salvation of Elohim, right. Which, by the way, if you ever watched any of the movies, you got this elder of the temple. He goes to see Yahusha as a baby being circumcised, and he bows before him. He says, I have seen now the salvation of Elohim. Oh, but that's not important, right? Okay. Moving on.
Simeon, right?
Yeah, the guy's Simeon. Okay, so again, but again, I guess it's just a mistake, right? Not intentional. Okay. I'm telling you guys, this is gonna be like a conspiracy theory to a lot of people. I'm telling you, they're gonna think I'm crazy.
You sounded like Jim Staley. Just a coincidence, right?
Yeah. There's nothing suspect about this. Oh no, don't look here. Nothing to see here. Okay. Isaiah 42 verse 4. The LXX version would say, "In his name shall the Gentiles trust," which, by the way, Matthew 12:21 is quoting from. Masoretic text says, "Wait upon his law." So people might say, well, it's so bad it's saying wait upon his law. Well, you change that phrase, then you're taking Yahusha out of that text, and they're just talking about waiting upon Yahuwah's Torah. You see the difference? So when you do that, it takes Yahusha out of the verse. So Isaiah 42 verse 4 in the Scriptures 1998 translation would say, "He does not become weak or crushed until he has established right ruling in the earth, and the coastlands wait for his Torah."
That's exactly what mine says.
Yep. Now, if you go to the Septuagint, it says, "He shall shine out and shall not be discouraged until he has set judgment on the earth. And in his name shall the Gentiles trust." Which, by the way, that's where Matthew's getting that in Matthew 12:21. Okay, so, and we see that too. Yahusha's talking about, "I've come in my Father's name." So again, Yahusha even puts context about believing in his name. So, again, that seems to be very intentional why they changed that. Isaiah 53 verse 8. The LXX version says, "He was led to death." Masoretic text just says he was stricken. So, meaning that he's just beaten. That's all. So it completely takes away from the idea. Here we go. So the ISR 1998 would say in Isaiah 53 verse 8, "He was taken from prison, from judgment. And as for his generation, who considered that he shall be cut off from the land of the living? For the transgression of my people, he was stricken." Okay, now if you look at the Septuagint, says here, "In humiliation, his right ruling was taken away. Who shall declare his generation? For his life is taken away from the earth. Because of the iniquities of my people, the lawlessnesses of my people, he was led to death." Now, the reason they would want to change this, by the way, is because these rabbis later on would try to tell these people that Isaiah 53 refers to Israel. So for a man to die for the sins of Israel, that would negate Israel as a suffering servant. So you see, they have a bias. That's why they're changing that.
That's why eventually they wouldn't let them even read it.
Yeah. I don't know how it is in America today, but it's definitely like that in Israel today. So
Yeah, I watched that one segment where one for Israel was over there talking to different people about that very chapter, and they said, "Oh, we're not allowed to read that." They came right out and said it, and some of them were very impressed with it after they heard about it.
By the way, this is not the only time that it happens. By the way, it also happens again in verse 12 of the same chapter. So we're going to look at this verse 12 here, and how, again, they try to hide it, that he died for the sins of Israel. Okay. Isaiah 53 verse 12. LXX says delivered for their sins. Masoretic text says interceded for their sins. Now, and I'm not denying the fact that he interceded for his people's sins when he's on the stake and all that, but the fact that they changed that verse to only talk about intercession and not his death, they're trying to erase the fact that the Messiah is supposed to die for the nation of Israel. So I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So the Scriptures 1998. "Therefore I give him a portion among the great. He divides the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his being unto death. He was counted with the transgressors. He bore the sins of many and made intercessions for the transgressors. Now, if you look at the Septuagint here, it says, therefore he shall inherit many, and he shall divide the spoils of the mighty, because his soul was delivered to death. He was numbered among the transgressors and bore the sins of many. He was delivered because of their lawlessnesses. So it's saying he's delivered to death because of their sins, rather than intercessing. Which obviously we know, like I said, he did intercess for some, but he didn't intercess for all the sinners. When he's on the stake, he's saying, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. And he's talking about the people that put him to death. He's not talking about the whole world. Okay. I know some people take that universally, but that's not what he's saying. He's talking about his own brothers that said, let his blood be on them. That's who he's meaning by Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. The people that followed the Pharisees saying, impale him. Okay. So, but anyway, so let's see. We got Isaiah 51 verse 5 next, which says, on my arm shall the Gentiles trust. Masoretic text says, my arm shall judge the Gentiles. Again, kind of doesn't make any sense in this context unless you're talking about the second coming. But this scripture seems to be talking about the first coming. So Yahusha even said, I did not come to judge. Yeah, he did not come to judge in his first coming. Okay. Isaiah 51 verse 5, we're going to look at the Masoretic first. It says, my righteousness is near, my salvation shall go forth, my arms shall judge peoples, coastlands wait upon me, and for my arm they shall wait expectantly. Now, if you look at the Septuagint here, it says, my righteousness shall speedily draw near, and my salvation shall go forth as light. And on my arm shall the Gentiles trust. The islands shall wait for me, and on my arm shall they trust. Now, people might be saying, well, what's the big deal, Doug? Why would they change that? Well, think about it, right? If you got a community of people that believe in the Messiah, that are using a text that is making it more obvious that he's the Messiah, and people are converting, you got to understand the first century AD, what was happening. Okay, you had the disciples going with the Septuagint, by the way, that was their Bible. Okay, they were going out making converts of their own Judean brothers like crazy, and these rabbis are like, "Oh my goodness, what the heck? We got to start changing this stuff, because if not, we're gonna have everyone's gonna leave our synagogues and accept this guy named Yahusha HaMashiach, Yahusha, the Nazarene." And so they realize that they're like, okay, we got to start changing stuff like this. So to them, it's crazy. They actually knew he's the arm that's being talked about here. So what do? They change, instead of trusting in the right hand of Yahuwah, Yahuwah's arm will judge the Gentiles, which doesn't make any sense because the judgment doesn't even come yet. So the whole prophecy of this doesn't even make sense to change it to he's going to judge them. First of all, that doesn't happen until the second coming. So they completely change it so that people are not getting the idea of, and it also takes away from the grafting in concept. If you think about it, it's saying he's going to judge them rather than trust in him. That takes away a grafting in concept, which, by the way, if you do your own research, the Pharisees did not believe in grafting in. They did not believe in that. I'm talking about ethnic Gentiles. They did not believe ethnic Gentiles could come in to Israel. So you'll see that sometimes in the Masoretic text, where they want to take away in general any concept of Gentile, physical ethnic Gentiles becoming part of Israel. So they'll take away that.
It's laughable, because then they would have had to kick out Abraham.
So yeah, so they and modern rabbis today, that's why they love using the Masoretic text, because it does this a lot. It makes it look like Gentiles can't come in. So by changing a little word in a verse, it makes it look like the Gentiles are already being judged before they can even believe in the Messiah. You see what I'm saying? Just a little change of phrase there in Isaiah 51 verse 5. So for those just joining in and just showing differences in the messianic prophecies here, how the Masoretes wanted to take Yahusha out of the prophecies. We just left off at Isaiah 51 verse 5, where the LXX says, "On my arm the Gentiles shall trust," versus his arm or arms shall judge the Gentiles. So it's a huge difference there. So the next one we have here is Isaiah 56 verse 1, where the LXX has mercy. So Septuagint has mercy in that verse. The Masoretic text has righteousness. And a lot of times this will happen too, where the word mercy will be changed to righteousness for some weird reason. And sometimes it's even a context to promote like works-based salvation type of thing. Isaiah 56 verse 1. All right, so just moving on here. Isaiah 56 verse 1. So it says, "Thus says Yahuwah, keep ye right ruling and do right ruling, or do righteousness. For my salvation is near to come and my mercy to be revealed." Thus says, so that's the Septuagint version. The Masoretic says, "Thus says Yahuwah, keep ye right ruling and do righteousness, for my salvation is near to come and my righteousness to be revealed." I'll tell you why this doesn't make any sense. Was his Torah or righteousness hidden in the Old Testament? Did Israel not know his righteousness?
No.
So why does it need to be revealed? Versus the Septuagint saying his mercy to be revealed. And yes, he had mercy in the Tanakh, but we see later on in the Brit Hadashah, John, probably pulling from this chapter here, says Yahusha is the fullness of what? Fullness of mercy. So the fullness of Yahuwah's mercy was not revealed to Israel in the Tanakh. But to say that his righteousness wasn't revealed, that's kind of ridiculous. So that's why I personally go with the Septuagint version of Isaiah 56 verse 1. Makes way more sense. It blends with the Brit Hadashah. So it shows that they're changing little words here to make the disciples look crazy. That's what's really going on here. Because if they're going to want their people not to believe in the Brit Hadashah, not to believe in the good news, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to make Paul look like a crazy person, John look like a crazy person. They're going to have to make the apostles look like liars, is what the Masoretes had to do. And so they're changing like everything that the apostles are quoting from. So it makes it look like that they're just making up stuff on the fly. And you see that in Psalms 40 verses 6 to 8 that we read earlier. It doesn't even match what Paul's quoting from. The phrase in it is completely different. "You have opened my ears." You know, it makes Paul look like crazy. So the Masoretes are doing this on purpose to invalidate the New Testament. So that's the point I'm trying to bring up. The Masoretes are changing the text to make the New Testament look invalid. And so I just find it funny that a lot of our former Mishpachah brothers and sisters out there, most of them that reject the New Testament, by the way, are using like a King James Masoretic Old Testament Bible, usually. Rarely are they looking into older versions of the Tanakh. Okay, so again, this is why. So and then you got revisionist history people out there on social media talking about the New Testament has changed the quotes. No, they haven't. Okay, these Masoretic scribes have changed the quotes in the Tanakh to make the New Testament look invalid. That's what's going on here. In 700 AD to 1000 AD, you had these scribes changing these quotes. Okay, changing these verses that we're looking at here so that it makes the New Testament look like it contradicts the Old Testament. You see what I'm saying? So that's the real story here. But anyway, so the reason I want to explain that, so when you're looking at these differences, that you can start putting together like the picture here, why there's these differences here. What was the purpose of them changing these things? Okay, so now we're going to go to Deuteronomy 32, verse 43. So Deuteronomy 32, verse 43. Okay.
42.
Oh no, 32 verse
Oh,
43.
sorry, my mistake.
It's okay. Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 43. By the way, Paul quotes from this in his own letter. Okay, so we're going to look at the Masoretic version here. It says, "Rejoice, you heavens, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants. He will render vengeance to his adversaries and will be merciful unto his land and to his people." Sounds okay, right? But there's something missing. If you look at the Septuagint version, "Rejoice, you heavens, with him, and let all the angels of Elohim worship him. Rejoice, you Gentiles, with his people, and let all the sons of Elohim strengthen themselves in him. For he will avenge the blood of his sons. He will render vengeance and repay right ruling to his enemies, and will reward them that hate him. And Yahuwah shall purge the land of his people." So the important thing here is, why is this important? Because later on, Paul quotes from this exact verse. But Paul says this verse, the hymn of this verse is referring to Messiah. Hebrews 1:6. So Paul is calling Yahusha Yahuwah.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the Septuagint, he is clearly calling the Father the Son, same exact person. Okay, because literally he's quoting from Deuteronomy 32:43, saying, and again, when he brings in the first begotten into the world, he says, "Let all the angels of Elohim worship him." Who's the him? The first begotten.
Mm-hmm.
So again, another thing you'll notice too is the Septuagint is very pro oneness. There's no way to get away from the oneness truth in Scripture, especially when you're looking at the Septuagint. And that's another thing the Masoretic rabbis did not like, is that the Septuagint validated Yahusha's claim that he was the Father in human flesh.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like that either. So they're going to take away anything that's pro oneness.
Yeah.
They're going to take away anything. So anyway, just wanted to show that. Isaiah 28 verse 16. The Masoretic text changes the word ashamed here to haste. And I'm going to show you why this is a pretty important change here, because this is a messianic prophecy dealing with the cornerstone here. So we're going to go to Isaiah 28 verse 16. Okay. So Isaiah 28 verse 16. "Therefore thus says Yahuwah, behold, I lay for the foundations of Sion a costly stone, a choice, a cornerstone, a precious stone for its foundations, and he that believes him shall by
him. That's what's missing. Whoever believes will not be in haste. So
yeah
the Septuagint makes that in him.
yeah even though the hymn's not there, it's kind of inferred. They kind of put in italics there. It's kind of inferred. He that believes on shall by no means be ashamed. I mean, but there's also a difference. That's not the difference, Mom. I'm going to show you the difference here. Actually, where did I actually? What was the difference in that one? I know I jotted it down here. Ashamed. So they change ashamed to haste at the end. So it would say, "He that believes shall not make haste." Doesn't make any sense, because haste is talking about hurry.
That's not an equal.
And by the way, the New Testament actually says ashamed, just FYI, when they're quoting from Isaiah 28:16, that says, "He that believes on him shall not be put to shame." Mm-hmm. So it's word for word the same with the LXX there. But the Masoretic puts put to haste, or some weird "shall not hasten away."
Haste, yeah.
The ISR tries to fix it there, but it's still bad. It says, "He who trusts shall not hasten away." It's still bad. It's still, this is the thing about these restored name translators. And if there's any listening in and watching this, please just use the Septuagint. Stop trying to fix the Masoretic. Again, why are you using a source that doesn't even believe in the Messiah? Again, I don't know, man. It baffles me sometimes. It really does. But anyway, so we got two more cross references. One of the last ones here we have is Isaiah 29 verse 13. So Isaiah 29 verse 13, we're going to go there. Again, this is a quote that Yahusha quotes from himself. We're going to see what happens here and why they possibly changed it here. And actually the ISR tries to fix this verse. I'll tell you why, because in the Masoretic text, the word Adonai is actually there. So FYI, they try to fix it. Scriptures 1998 try to fix this. So one of the major problems with the Masoretic version of this is you have Adonai H1366 rather than what's supposed to be there is the H3068 of the Strong's Concordance, which would be Yahuwah, the Tetragrammaton, is supposed to be there. So the ISR, at least to their credit, tries to fix that, as you can see here, but they're still using the Masoretic. So it's still going to not be the correct quote here. So it says, because this people, Isaiah 29:13 from the Masoretic of the Scriptures 1998, because this people has drawn near with its mouth and with its lips, they have esteemed me, and it has kept its heart far from me, and their fear of me has become a command of men that is taught. So now it focuses on the fact that the fear of Yahuwah is not truly fear of Yahuwah. That is a commandment of men that is taught. And I get it. It probably was happening back then. But that's not what Yahusha is focusing on, okay? And that's not what the original text said, okay? The original would have said as follows. And Yahuwah has said, these people draw near to me with their mouth, and they honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me, but in vain do they worship me, teaching the commandments and doctrines of men. Which, by the way, is word for word what Yahusha says in Mark chapter 7, verse 6-7, okay? So the Masoretes, for whatever reason, decide to change that phrase in that verse. For no reason, for no conceivable reason at all, they decide to change that verse. Maybe because Yahusha quoted from the original source and they figured, okay, well, if we're going to say Yahusha's, not viable, we got to make it look like he's quoting from an incorrect source, whatever they had to tell themselves to change that verse. Whatever you got to get to sleep at night and, whatever you got to tell yourself to make it look like it's okay to change that, but the original of that verse was equal to what Yahusha quoted from in Mark 7, chapter 7, verses 6-7. And you can find it, I think, also Matthew 15:28, I think. Okay, so anyway, the last cross reference we have here, which is very subtle, is Malachi chapter 3, verse 1. It's very subtle. But they try to separate the messenger of the covenant from Yahuwah. Like that. They try to make it look like they're not the same person. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about here. It's very subtle with the wording. Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. And the Adonai whom you seek shall suddenly come to his temple. Yeah, so that's another problem I have with the Masoretic is tons of Adonais that they want to add in there. It says, and he shall suddenly the master who you are seeking comes to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant whom you delight, see he is coming, says Yahuwah of armies. Okay, so I actually got to take that back. You can still get the idea that it's Yahuwah is the messenger of the covenant later on in the verse, but I don't like how it's a little vague there. On the Septuagint, the way it's worded, it's a little bit more obvious, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So, behold, I send forth my messenger, he shall survey the way before me, and Yahuwah whom you seek shall suddenly come into his temple, even the angel of the covenant, whom you take pleasure in. Behold, he is coming, says Yahuwah Almighty. So again, it's a little vague in the Masoretic. They changed the wording a little bit to make it vague. but I wanted to include that one because it's showing that the messenger of the covenant is none other than Yahuwah himself. Okay, so, and by the way, you can look in like other versions, older versions of the Tanakh, whenever the messenger, the Malach of Yahuwah was mentioned in Genesis, a lot of the times certain Targums would paraphrase it as the messenger of the covenant. So they understood this person who's known as the messenger of Yahuwah was also known as the messenger of the covenant, same person. Okay. But anyway, so hopefully this study was edifying to those that watched this. Hopefully this kind of got you guys interested in looking into the Septuagint, and starting to, look into things like this. And hopefully for a lot of our brothers and sisters out there that only want to trust in restored name Bibles, at the minimum kind of showed you that even those Bibles are not perfect. Okay, and they rely heavily on a corrupted Tanakh. Okay, so I really wanted to do this study also as a way to reach out to these Jewish people out there, because I know there's certain Jewish people that will watch our videos in times past. So hopefully any Jewish people out there, this will kind of give you some ammo to start asking your rabbis, why haven't they letting you know about this version of the Tanakh that you're, if you really are from the tribe of Yehuda, your ancestors would have definitely read in the first century. So, this is stuff you should be asking your rabbi. Why has he not letting you know what who Isaiah 53 is really talking about? Why have you been told that Israel is a suffering servant when that's not what that chapter says? So hopefully this was a way to reach out to other people, hopefully to those that are already getting shaken in their foundation of the Brit Hadashah, that are being tempted to reject the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament. Hopefully this study was for you too, to prevent you from falling away, because now you can see that the reason you think there's contradictions is mainly due to a faulty version of the Old Testament that the majority of Bibles use today. And I know that sounds harsh. I don't want to shake anyone's faith, but that's the reality. That's the harsh reality. The Masoretic text is a corrupted, rabbinically influenced, anti-Yahusha rabbinically influenced, not just rabbinically influenced, but rabbis that hated Yahusha, it's influenced by them. So as far as doctrine goes, the Masoretic text is going to be far from perfect doctrine, and I get it. Not any version of the scriptures today that we have is a firsthand source. I get it. It's a copy of a copy of a copy, almost every manuscript. I get it. But even I challenge those that are watching right now, even just take a Brenton's English Septuagint. I know a ton of you guys got Bible apps out there. Okay. Start testing even any version of the Masoretic text you want to use, whether it's the ISR, Holy Scriptures, start testing it against the Brenton's LXXE. And you'll even see from a translation, you don't even have to look deep into the Greek and the Hebrew. You'll start seeing differences. You'll start, like we saw tonight with the messianic prophecies. I didn't even have to go deep into the Hebrew or the Greek. And there's huge differences. Okay, so I would recommend brothers and sisters that are really led to, do this, if you really love Yahusha and you really want to have a better understanding of these prophecies, so eventually when you witness to people, you can show people, that he has fulfilled these prophecies. So I really recommend for those that are, definitely those that are shaken by what seemingly seems to be contradictions of the prophecies or the quotes from the New Testament, I really, really challenge you right now to look into the Septuagint and older versions of the Tanakh, like the Samaritan Pentateuch, and I would recommend even looking into other versions, like even looking into the Dead Sea Scrolls when you talk about the messianic prophecies, and you'll start seeing that it's more or less a bias with our modern Masoretic text, Old Testaments. And so anyway, so hopefully this message was a baraka to all those that were able to watch and listen in. Please stay tuned. Abba Yahuwah willing, will be doing our regular chapter by chapter, book by book readings tomorrow. We'll be picking up. I think we're doing like Genesis 44 tomorrow, Yahuwah willing. So anyway, just wanted to say to all of our brothers and sisters out there, have a great rest of your Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, and see you guys next time.